Good morning, good evening, good afternoon, lovely people, depending on where you're watching us from this beautiful world. Today, I have the absolute honor to have a lovely person next to me, and I am just so blown away by who Justin is. I came across Justin Clifford on LinkedIn. I saw you posting something, I saw you commenting something. I followed that trail, I looked what you're doing, and I connected with you, and I'm like, I have to have you on Unsilence Grief because what you do is of such value to everyone around us. So, Justin, please do us the honor and introduce yourself to our audience. Welcome.
Thanks, Marie. Thanks a ton for having me. The invitation, connecting,
Mm,
just that meant a lot. So very much appreciate having gotten to know you a little bit over the past couple of months. My name is
thank
Justin
you.
Clifford. Obviously, I'm the CEO at a company called Bereave in the United States, and our mission is to change the way that we experience death.
Yeah,
And we'll talk a lot about that. But
yeah.
that's my job. That's where I am. I'm in the kind of the heartland of the United States, just south of Chicago, about 3 hours for those that know Chicago.
Beautiful. I don't, but thank you for sharing this.
Okay.
Um, I obviously come live from Sydney, Australia, so I
Sure.
always love like getting to know the states because I have a lot of guests coming from the states and then sharing, and I get to learn. So to me, it feels like a bit of a geography lesson every time I have guests on from the US. So
Sure.
thank you so much for being here. I truly love, I have to point it out straight away because the first thing I asked you when we came live a couple of minutes ago was whose birthday is it? So I'm going to say happy fifth
Yeah.
birthday to your son in case he ever watches
Thank
this.
you. Thank you.
What
His name is Bo, and
obviously,
I'm sure he'll appreciate that when he sees it. I'll
happy
make sure he
birthday,
does.
Bo. It's so beautiful.
Thanks.
So obviously, for our viewers, it is always of big interest. You know, what is your personal story behind that? Before we go
Hmm.
into what you actually offer, what you actually do with Bereave,
Hmm.
which I'm absolutely in awe of. I just would love to have you share your personal story. What made you do
Hmm.
this? What came? Yeah. What was your path
Yeah.
basically?
Um, I think there are a multitude of reasons, but I think when you look at it, it really boils down to a couple things. I was raised. My mom, both my parents actually were teachers in some respect. My mom was a grade school teacher. I went on to be an administrator in an early childhood education environment. So I
Mm,
became a teacher. That's what I went to
yeah.
school for. That's what I did right out of college, and I've always had this very strong intrinsic motivation, especially when it comes around making change. So being able to teach kids
Mm,
in a classroom and see their growth over the course of the 9-10 months that you spend with them is always a was always a gift to me, and I
oh,
have
I love
since.
hearing that.
Uh,
As a mom, that really touches me.
yeah. I got swept away into the business world. I spent a ton of time in sales, both as an individual contributor, as a salesperson, and as a sales leader. But those were opportunities to kind of scratch that itch of helping people move through their careers, helping people learn, helping people get better at their jobs, helping people move through their life with hopefully a foundation that I was able to help provide in some way.
Mm,
So that intrinsic motivation always came through managing people. I had the opportunity to start at Bereave. A couple of the co-founders approached me about joining them about 15 months ago now, and they really shared their journey. So, Bereave was started prior to my arrival. Two of the co-founders lost parents prematurely. They
mm,
had been friends for a long time. They realized just through their relationship and their respective journeys how broken just the whole survivor experience really was. And
yeah.
like any good entrepreneurial story, they said, hey, we should try to go fix this. Like
Mm,
it sucks to lose somebody that you love, but it's even worse compounded by all of the things that you have to go through, from planning a wedding scale event in 72
yeah.
hours and a funeral and having
Yeah.
people fly all over, from
Yeah.
all over the country, all
Yeah.
the way through the business side of things and closing accounts and that kind of thing. So we
Mm,
really just have set off to go do that. And we literally have the opportunity to touch every human being in some way, and I couldn't find another opportunity to really get that intrinsic motivation than have the opportunity to touch every human. We probably won't, that's not that, I don't think that'll happen. That's pretty grandiose.
Mm.
But we can be
Reach for the
thinking about
stars.
it.
Yeah.
Yeah, it's great. It's great motivation to be thinking about,
Yeah.
which is the reason that I wanted to join these guys and help them with their mission.
Yeah. I love it. I think it is absolutely beautiful to have a big goal, especially when you have got such a deep mission, of helping people through something that is such a once in a lifetime experience. And of course, I get it, people will lose more than one person, but every person is that once in a lifetime experience. It is such a unique experience for people that really needs the support. And at the moment,
Hmm.
I feel that there's a huge lack of that happening in corporate space.
Hmm.
And I understand that by saying that, I might ruffle some feathers. But when you look around and people go like, oh, but we've got this and that program and we've got that and that ready for our staff. And then you actually talk to people who have gone through bereavement leave and have to go back to work. And I say that deliberately because I don't use the words have to lightly. Everybody who knows
Right.
me knows like, you really have to. That's my coaching approach. But
Hmm.
yeah, often people have to go back to work
Yeah.
way earlier than they actually feel ready emotionally and mentally ready to
Hmm.
come back to work, because this is just the fact of the matter that the bereavement
Sure.
leave is usually too short. Let's face it,
Hmm.
you get
Right.
what, something between 2 days and 2 weeks, depending on where you're at in the world or in the companies.
Hmm.
And then you come back to work, and then what?
Hmm. Right.
I feel, and I'd love to hear your opinion on this, because I
Sure.
feel the biggest hurdle when people come back to work after bereavement leave is that they are usually faced with, I call it one of the most emptiest sentences, my condolences, or a
Hmm.
little bit better, but still the same, I'm sorry for your loss. And
Sure.
these are the usual two go tos. So
Hmm.
I feel there's a huge lack of helping people with grief language. How do we actually
Hmm.
talk about it? Do we talk
Hmm.
about it? When, how, what? Everybody feels so uncomfortable and doesn't know
Hmm.
what to say when people come back
Right.
from bereavement leave. They tiptoe around, feel very awkward, either say something really not helpful or worse, completely disappear and avoid the person.
Sure.
But
Sure.
what the person is left with is extreme loneliness, and it gets
Hmm.
highlighted with every my condolences or
Sure.
tiptoeing around. That person feels that and
Hmm.
feels very, very excluded. So with what you do in Bereave,
Hmm.
how do you help a company through that? How do you help
Yeah.
raise awareness and educate them about a better way to deal with that?
Yeah. Great question. And I think we are in a very fortunate position to have people reaching out to us daily, multiple
Yeah,
people a day in some cases, telling us about their lost journeys, wanting to talk to us, wanting to
yeah,
to share their experience. And we've got all of this data, thousands of data points by now,
yeah,
starting with a survey that we did early last fall. Um, uh, it's so interesting because there are so many bad experiences that people want to talk about, want to share in terms of the way their
mm,
manager or their
yeah,
employer showed up or didn't show up, right? Conversely, there are some amazingly inspiring
mm,
scenarios out there that have occurred, right? And people have raised their hands to share those with us as well. And so
mm,
what we did is we took all of that data and just started digging through and noticing some themes.
yeah,
And we built around those themes. And so one of the things that we do, we have a software platform. And part of that software platform is for specifically for HR and managers to
mm,
get very baseline training, self-guided training
mm,
on what grief is, what to say, what not to say, like you just described, what to do, what
yeah,
not to do, understanding empathy and compassion and why those things are important in the workplace. This is not a
yeah,
deep training. This is 15
yeah,
to 20 minutes that it takes
awesome.
just to get leveled up, right?
Yeah,
In the same platform, we also have what I would refer to as like a 201, right? Kind of a little bit
mm,
next level, a little bit deeper for
mm,
for managers, but like
yeah,
just getting people leveled up is kind of where we start. So when we bring on a
yeah,
customer, We help their managers access those areas.
Hmm.
We work with our customers to make sure that they have at least some idea of how to include those things in professional development
Mm.
tracks or leadership
Yeah.
development tracks that they already have going. So that's kind of like baseline understanding is just
Yeah.
critical.
Yeah.
And the bar is so low to make a difference. That's where we
Yes.
needed to
Oh,
start.
thank you for saying that. I really appreciate you saying that because often, it's portrayed as something that is so complicated. And yes, grief is so complex because it is so unique. However, making a difference just by using slightly different language makes a huge difference to the person,
Sure.
who wants to be part of the tribe, basically. That's
Right.
what we all have. We are all born with this sense of wanting to belong, because when we go back to really
Mhm.
primal state, this is where we are safe. We don't want to be
Sure.
excluded from the tribe. We want to stay safe. And the same
Mhm.
goes for when we come back to the workforce. So what I'm just hearing from what you shared, what you have on your platform, and I'm on this platform, I really love it.
Mhm.
I had a look
Mhm.
around, and it really is so beautifully presented and so simple for people to get
Mhm.
through, yet there is so much on
Thank you.
offer. So I really
Mhm.
urge everybody to just check it out or just have a conversation with you, because let's face it, grief really affects all of us sooner or later.
Sure.
And I'm not saying that as a woo, I
Right.
don't say that in a threatening
Right.
way, oh my goodness, but let's be
Sure.
realistic. Grief affects all of us sooner or later.
Yeah.
And in that case, what you just said, I love that you say there is this absolute base level, just, 15 to 20 minutes to get to know how you can actually use language differently to be more helpful, to be
Mhm.
more welcoming for the person coming back. But also, it is something that I really recommend is like, please, it sounds so terrible to say that, but I have to be straightforward with this topic. Please don't wait around until somebody in your company, or let alone in your family,
Sure.
loses somebody and you're affected by it, in a passive
Mhm.
or very active kind of way.
Mhm.
Be proactive with this. Be proactive.
Mhm.
You don't just have to use that in the workforce. You can
Sure.
literally use those tools anywhere and everywhere. We all face people, friends, relatives that have lost somebody in their circles. So the sooner we learn how we can change the language, I think the better it is. We make it a better
Mhm.
world. And I know how easy it is when you are completely lost for words,
Mhm.
because it really is hard to say something there. How
Sure.
easy it is to revert back to my condolences. And I don't use this phrase anymore at all. I completely steer away from it. I
Mhm.
rather say things like, my heart goes out to you, or
Mhm.
would you like to talk about it?
Mhm.
Something that is more helpful. Anything is more helpful than my
Sure.
condolences.
Sure.
Um, can you talk a little bit more about, you said there is this advanced training then as well that
Mhm.
managers can do, that anybody in the company can go through. How long are we talking about to do this training? You said the base
I
level is
mean,
15 to 20
yeah,
minutes.
right now, that next level probably totals an hour. We partnered
Oh,
with
perfect.
a woman named Leslie Barber who started a company called the Grief Warrior after her husband passed several years ago,
Mm.
and she worked with companies and developed a LinkedIn Learning course. And we basically point people to that as a starting point, and then we've
Hmm.
got a couple of subject matter experts that also chime in a couple different capacities. It's interesting that we're talking about training, because starting in August, I think, we
Hmm.
are actually going to start with a live manager training, monthly one
Mm.
hour live
Oh,
manager training, where
I
we
love it.
are, Bereave is footing the bill to bring trainers in and to train our customers. So this is going to be something
Mm.
specifically for our customers, but basically to pull managers in, understand about grief, understand about empathy, topics like how to have difficult conversations,
Yeah.
those kind of things that are what I would call like grief and maybe even loss adjacent. Some of the
Yeah.
skills that are underlying to support people in those moments. We're going to have expert trainers come in and do that stuff. So
Mm.
that is in response to customer feedback, prospect feedback, that they just don't have enough manager training in general.
Yeah.
So we want to start providing a little bit of that, and that
Yeah.
will be hopefully applicable beyond just loss and grief.
I love this. I just love this, because the thing is, wherever I look into, if that's a corporate space, or very, very personal experience when my husband died and the boys went back to school. The boys were 10 and 8 at the time. So when they went back to school, I literally had the principal, their two teachers, and the school counselor reach out to me to ask, how can we support your kids best?
Mm-hmm.
And I was so taken aback because I thought, oh my God, I thought that you would know this. I have no
Sure.
idea. And I was thinking,
Right.
when you look at the statistics, I don't know how the statistics are in America, but I know that the statistics here in Australia are that 1 in 20 children loses one or
Mm-hmm.
both parents before they turn 18. This
Mm-hmm.
is shocking when you think of how many that is. I just can't understand
Sure.
why teachers wouldn't be trained better in how to deal with that. There has
Mm-hmm.
to be
Yeah.
a subject at least. And
Yeah.
when you say, a base level can be 15 to 20 minutes, a bit more extended version of it is an hour. If you think of adding that to the curriculum of becoming a teacher,
Mm-hmm.
and I don't know about you, but I'm going to put you on the spot here, Justin. Have
Sure.
you had any training on how to deal with loss when you became a teacher? Because you said you were
Oh,
a teacher
none.
before, so
None.
none.
No, we
Yeah,
we learned, and this was, I'm a little bit, I'm kind of like a college professor's worst nightmare, just
yeah.
because I push buttons a lot, and I
I
ask
love it.
why a lot, like I have a very toddler mentality, but we learned all about just some great educational philosophy that had been
Yeah.
developed 100 years prior, and we
Mm.
kept asking, like, how do we use this in the classroom?
Yeah,
And we learned a lot of great things. We learned
yeah,
how to teach. We learned how to create a lesson plan. But nobody came
yeah.
to us and said, "Hey," especially me specifically,
Mm.
and some of my colleagues who taught inner city schools very intentionally had a specialization. But in order
Yeah,
to learn some of those things about trauma and just even understanding what an inner city student might go through compared to a non-inner city student, um,
yeah.
uh, those situations were only taught to me because I sought them out. Those were not part
Mm.
of our regular curriculum,
Yeah.
right? And grief wasn't on that. Grief and loss wasn't on
Yeah,
that. We probably touched on family dynamics and probably
yeah,
touched on the fact that families
yeah,
go in a lot of different directions and they can be very emotional directions,
yeah,
especially in the inner city. But not grief and loss specifically. No.
yeah. I didn't plan to do this, but I do want to share one other
Hmm.
personal thing here. And it was a very, very tiny, I'm going to make this super short because don't want to
Hmm.
take too much away from your time. But I had one experience speaking about, said, a school counselor, where she said to me, and we were in constant contact, like we talked like 2, 3 times a week. And my boys saw her once a week, and she would always
Hmm.
come back and say if they came out of whatever. Um, And she said to me, Marie, I really don't know if I'm getting through to your sons because
Hmm.
one of them in particular was in that space. I don't want to talk about it. I don't want to talk about it.
Hmm.
He would just completely shut off. This is none of your business, sort of thing. And yet, when he had a bit of a emotional breakdown, when I took him to Hapkido, he did martial arts at the time, and we walked in. He was falling apart. I could see it happening. I said, "We
Hmm.
don't have to be here. Do you want to leave?" And he said, "Yes." I sat in the
Hmm.
car. He was crying. I had to get my act together to hold space for him because there's a time where you cry together and there's a time where you need to
Sure.
hold space as a parent. And I looked at him and I said, "Where's your happy place at the moment?"
Hmm.
Just calmly. And he said,
Hmm.
"At Doreen's," and that's a school counselor. I
Hmm.
was blown
Hmm.
away by this. She kept telling
Wow.
me I'm not getting through to him. And I
Sure.
gave her that feedback.
And
I'm
she
getting all
was.
emotional saying that now.
Yeah.
But I said that to her because I said, sometimes you do so much more than you think
Sure.
just by creating this space where he can just
Hmm.
be and doesn't have to talk about it. And I really
Sure.
felt like sharing this right now because I'm saying, they felt helpless, but sometimes that's
Hmm.
all it takes to create
Hmm.
this sacred space, a safe space where people can just be and don't have to
Totally.
talk about it.
Yeah.
Um,
Yeah. You're making great
so
points about school.
yeah,
We actually have a customer that is a school district,
no,
and
beautiful.
as we haven't gotten far enough in the engagement yet, but as you're even saying with them, and I'm meeting with them next week,
Mm,
I it what you're saying is very enlightening, and it makes me think that even though we restrict part of our platform for what we would refer to as HR and managers,
Yeah.
that teachers probably need that same level of content because they are essentially managing students. And we've talked to other people who
Oh,
have
yes.
said, hey, I lost a parent or I lost somebody while I was in grade school or high school, and
Yeah.
that experience was terrible, that the school was
Yeah.
unprepared. They weren't
Yeah.
able to support my family. They weren't able to
Yeah.
support me. And people fall to the counselor just like at work.
Yeah.
They probably fall to HR and say help,
Yeah.
right?
Yeah.
But why
But
not
they're not always
have a
prepared. Yeah.
right? Why not have a broader reach with at
Mm.
least that general sense of understanding of what to do and what not to do, and then really a place to
Yeah.
go back if you need it, right? And where it's accessible
Yeah.
anytime that you need it, so you don't have to
Yeah.
remember it, but at least you have
Mm.
that foundation. So
Yeah.
thanks for that. I'm actually gonna bring that up
Yeah.
next week with our
I
customer.
love it. I think we might have another conversation about this after we finish
Sure.
here. Oh, it's so beautiful. Justin, give us a bit of a rundown. So we talked about
Mhm.
the platform. You talked about you've got the baseline there and you've got a bit of extended. What else can people
Mhm.
find on the platform? Or when people listen to this now
Sure.
and they say, oh my goodness, I really need to get in contact with you.
Mhm.
What else can people find? And then we'll talk about how they can reach you as well. But what else can
Sure.
people find on this platform? What do you offer? Give us a bit of a
Sure. Yeah, happy to. Thank you for that. I think, when you ask business leaders what bereavement means to them in the workplace, you hear
yeah,
one of three things or some combination or maybe all three. You hear about time off, right? It's usually 2 to 5 days is average in the
yeah.
United States, no matter the relationship. You hear
Wow.
about, yeah, I know. You hear about a policy that really nobody knows where it is, who's eligible, how
Mm-hmm.
to find it. But that policy usually states the time off and eligibility requirements and things like that. And then you hear about an EAP, right?
Mm.
An employee assistance program,
Yes.
where HR folks typically say, hey, there's this number that you can call. And when you call it, they
Mm.
will do intake on you and they will give you
Yeah.
3 free therapy sessions, right? Uh, Having been in therapy for a long time,
Mm.
the first three are like basically coffee dates, right?
Yes.
Like,
Touching the
and and
surface.
and and you're still trying to figure out if this person is going to be able
Mm.
to help me or not long term, right?
Mm-hmm.
So, um, while it's a start, it's just wholly unsupportive. The whole system
Yeah.
that has been developed is wholly unsupportive. So
Mm.
really, we took an approach that creates these layers of support instead of these, what I'll refer to as random acts of bereavement support, right? EAP,
Mm.
a manager that just
Yeah.
maybe send
Yeah.
flowers, right? And let's come
Yes.
back to work in 5 days and
Yeah. We
hopefully
tick the
everything
five
goes well.
boxes. We're done.
Right,
Yeah.
exactly,
Yeah. Mm.
exactly, exactly.
Yeah.
So we've created a much deeper support system,
Mm.
starting with the manager so that they know how to react from a training perspective. The HR team, the executives, everybody knows, at least has that baseline foundation. From there, two things happen. We have an employee section, which has been called an employee benefit,
Mm-hmm.
and we've basically taken one of the big pieces of feedback that we heard from people who suffered loss. Say, I didn't know where to turn. I'd never experienced this before, so I
Yes.
didn't know what to do.
Yeah.
So I Googled what to do when someone dies, and I was served with
Yeah.
funeral home ads. Nothing
Yeah.
helpful, right?
No.
So we built for employees, and all employees have access to three specific things. They have access anytime they want to navigating loss, everything from,
Mm-hmm.
what do I do right now in the moment that I
Yeah.
just found out, right? Very
Yeah.
tactical, practical
Yeah.
things, no fluff,
Yeah.
working through how to, all the way down to like write an obituary. How
Mm.
do I do that, right? How do I go to the funeral
Yeah.
home? What do I say? What do I ask? What do I need to know?
Yeah.
There's a big section about grief and
Mm-hmm.
self-care,
Yeah.
very specific grief, like there's child loss and spousal loss and
Mm-hmm.
parental loss. But then there are also very general things. So we built a lot of content and a lot of resources around grief. And the
Mm-hmm.
third section really is for the employee. It's really how to support friends and family.
Yeah.
A neighbor loses a parent, right? How do I go
Mm.
support that neighbor, right?
Yeah.
What are some of the things that I can do? And we've partnered with subject matter experts throughout that have helped us build this content out. And it's a fantastic resource for employers to acknowledge that there are
Yeah.
unceremonious times in life and they are looking after them in those situations.
Yeah.
The second side of the platform is much more employer benefit focused.
Mm-hmm.
So we already talked about the training, but the second part are workflows and tools that
Mm-hmm.
help HR and managers know what to do. So one of the things that
Yeah,
we heard a lot is people say, "Hey, sorry, bumped in my microphone.
that's okay.
Crazy hands over here." One of the things that we heard a lot about is like, "Hey, we want to do more, but we don't know how."
Yeah,
And when you dig into what they actually do when a loss occurs, they often default to ways of the past, right? Which is those random acts of bereavement.
yeah,
So
yeah.
we
Wow, I
created,
love that term. That
right?
makes so much
We
sense.
created workflows, right? Checklists that HR can take out and just start working through, right? They don't have to
Mm,
think about what to do. They just
yeah,
have to start executing,
yeah.
right? So
So
there's that
they are
piece.
then the list of
Yeah.
nurturing acts of bereavement. Yeah.
Oh yeah, exactly, exactly.
Yeah,
And you think about like just remembering to, if an employee says, "Hey, I got to go. I just got a phone call," like all the way
yeah,
down to like covering their calendar, covering their
yeah,
work,
yeah,
talking to the team. Who's owning this message? Do we need to communicate internally, externally? Do we need to talk to partners, clients, customers, prospects? Like who
yeah,
needs to know that this person is out? Who owns the narrative? Like all of these things to
yeah,
consider. Are we going to go to a service?
yeah.
Are we going to send a gift? Are we going to send flowers? Like, what are we going to do? Are we going to cover their therapy
Mm,
sessions? All of these things that they can be doing, they don't have
mm,
to do, but they should be considering. And that's really
yeah.
this list is just a bunch of considerations that they
I
really
love
need to be
this.
taking into account.
Wow. That
And
is,
that goes all
it's
the way
almost
through
like
to like
having it.
reentry as well.
Yeah, perfect. Love, love, love this. This is so necessary to have this. I really can't emphasize that enough. And to me, it almost feels like a bit of a registry. You don't know what you get, so let's have a look at the
Hmm.
registry. And these are the things
Yeah,
we can do, sort of,
totally.
like depending on where the employers are and how much they can get involved. And it's not always about finances. There's so many things that you can
Hmm.
do that don't have to cost money because a lot of people go like, well, we're on a budget, we can't do well,
Right.
there's a lot of things that you can do where you don't have to have a budget. And that comes back to
Totally.
basics, like we said before, the language that we use, or doing your
Yeah,
baseline and your extended training just to have a bit of an idea. What are we going to
sure.
actually do with that? And I
Sure.
just really want to invite
Sure.
everybody to
Yeah.
at least reach out, have a look. So
Yeah.
we will be sharing the link to your website in the show notes as well once we're done here.
That's kind of you.
And yeah, and of course, I want people to get in touch with you. And we will also be putting in your LinkedIn profile so people can just reach out to you directly or connect to you directly. But what is it that you would like to really leave our listeners with when you can pick, like,
Mhm.
let's just say, pick three of your absolute must remember from this podcast?
Yeah,
What would you like to share with them? Like, at least if you can just consider those three things,
sure.
um, what would that be?
Yeah, I'll even boil it down to two things, and I only
Awesome.
have American stats, but 1 in 19 American workers will suffer
Yeah.
a loss every year. 1 in 8 will lose a sibling, a spouse. I'm sorry, 1 in 8, 1 in 8 will suffer a loss. 1 in 19 will lose a spouse, a sibling, a child, or a parent, right?
Yeah.
People think a lot that loss, we talk to people all the time and say, well, we don't really hear about a whole lot of loss. It's
Yeah.
happening. Your team is probably feeling it. If they aren't
Mm.
feeling it from a recent loss, they are probably
Yeah.
grieving something else that is going on in their lives. The
Yeah.
second thing is that this is not a squishy thing. There is an ROI to this, right?
Mm.
In the United States, grief related productivity loss is $100
Mm.
billion plus problem. People are going to
Wow.
take time off. You might as well
Wow.
give them credit for it. They're going to take time
Mm.
off to grieve. They're going to take time off to work through estate closure.
Mm.
The statistic, at least here in the United States, is that anybody who is an estate executive of an estate is going to take 1 hour a day for 13 months to deal with that estate closure and to grieve for 13
Wow.
months. And think about when banks are open and credit card companies are open and courts are open. It's during the day, it's during the workday. So
Yeah.
people are going to take the time. The productivity is going to take a hit. There are things that you can do
Yeah.
to help them expedite a lot of that. Maybe not their grief. You could
Yeah.
buy them therapy, which would be great.
Yeah.
But there are things that you can do to support them throughout that
Mm.
first year to help get them back into productivity. It's
Yeah.
happening. Get credit for it. Support your team.
Thank you so much for sharing this because I
Sure.
actually think that when you lean into that type of support that you're offering
Mhm.
through Bereave, that there might be an additional bonus that it will actually enhance your team productivity as well. I know it's very
Totally.
risky of me to just claim this, but I really have that feeling that when you
Mhm.
lean into that, when you look into how can I support my team best, that there will be such a beautiful ripple effect to the entire team.
Mhm.
Because
Yeah.
that is just such a beautiful example of standing up for your team. And I think those who really open up to that
Mhm.
possibility of support and helping their team,
Yeah.
um, it will really add a little bit of magic to how the
Yeah.
team actually works. So I
And
don't
there's a
wish death
massive,
upon anyone, but I do understand that it will
sure.
eventually happen to everyone. And yeah, sorry, what did you want
No,
to
it's right.
say?
The
It's a
ripple effect that you said, I love that phrase because the ripple effect through a business is massive, right? You've
yeah,
got somebody out, somebody's got to do that work. Who's going to do
yeah,
that work, right? The
yeah,
managers are going to be working double time, or the people are going to be
yeah,
working extra, or something, right? And it just keeps going cross functionally,
yeah,
and the ripple effect even goes back to the people. People are watching how companies react to these things. They're
yes,
watching they're
yes,
watching, does the action line up
mm,
with the message on our careers
yeah,
page or on our culture
oh,
page? Are they walking the walk, right? So the
yeah,
ripple effect isn't just for the bereaved and the people close to the bereaved.
yeah.
People are watching, people hear it,
Yeah,
people are
there's
watching, and
so much more to it. Yeah,
so that when you said ripple effect, like that is just massive. And the fact that um, it's not just that person, right? We focus a lot on that
yeah,
person. It just goes
mm,
so much broader, and I don't think we really recognize that at work.
yeah. I love everything that we talk about today. I have the feeling that there will be a follow-up interview in the near future, and I'd love to have you back and see where Bereave is. There's just something that you have started here that
Mhm.
is so needed in this world, and I just want to say one thing: connect with Justin, reach out to him. Seriously, like if you run a business, you have to have this conversation, or you have to at least think through how can you prepare yourself for something that is very likely to happen in your team. So, Justin, I cannot thank you enough for being here. I loved the time with you here and what we talk about. So, thank you so much for sharing what you did today.
Ditto. Thank you for the invite and for the connection and for everything that you're doing as well, Marie.
You are very welcome. And everybody else, thank you so much for listening here. And if you like what you heard here, please subscribe to the YouTube channel, hit the notification bell so you never miss an episode again. Sending you